Craigslist Gone Wrong could be the simple tagline for the Creep series. Before you dive into the Creep tapes, this is everything you need to know about one of horror's most unnerving franchises. The first 2 episodes of the Creep tapes just dropped, and today on Nonstop Horror, we're going to be talking about the first 2 movies and everything we know up to this point about Mark Duplass's character, Josef, the serial killer and the main character in this series. We're going to be talking about the plots and themes of Creep 1 and 2, some unanswered questions that the series better answer, and some juicy details from Mark Duplass's AMA that he just did on Reddit. Lots to talk about today. Let's get into it. If you haven't seen these 2 found footage horror films, Creep 1 and Creep 2 are both available on Netflix right now if you want to check them out or if you need a refresher. I rewatched Creep 1 yesterday and just finished up Creep 2 again for the second time today, and let me tell you, they still live up. They're 2 of my favorite found footage horror films. So Patrick Brice and Mark Duplass are the masterminds behind the Creep series. The premise of the first film is basically this videographer named Aaron is looking for some work, and he sees this ad in Craigslist and decides to take them up on the offer. He drives out and meets up with Mark Duplass's character named Josef at his vacation home. Josef tells Aaron that he has cancer and he doesn't have very long to live, and so he wants Aaron to help him document a day in his life for his unborn child so that his unborn child can see the type of man that he was. The red flags start coming out immediately as Josef asks Aaron to film him taking a bath. He calls it a tubby. It's tubby time. His reasoning is that he wants to act like he's giving his unborn child a bath in the future because he probably won't be able to do that in real life. And this is just one of the most unsettling and awkward scenes that you'll ever see in your horror lifetime. Ask anyone who's seen this about tubby time and they'll probably cringe at you. Soon after, we're introduced to Peach Fuzz, this creepy wolf mask that is hiding in one of Joseph's closets. He explains that it's this mask that he had since his childhood, and he started singing this really weird song about it. But this wolf mask will become one of the most iconic images from this series. And fun fact, they initially wanted to call the series Peach Fuzz, but then they quickly realized that it would take too long for viewers to understand the reference and where Peach Fuzz came from, so they settled on Creep. So back to Josef and Aaron, a couple of other activities that they engage in throughout the day is they go on a hike and they have lunch at this diner where they have pancakes. And throughout the day, it's just like this really weird, awkward interaction between the 2. And I'm not going to lie, it's not only Josef who's acting weird, I feel like Aaron also gives off really awkward vibes as well. And that might be why he sticks around for so long. He's met someone who kind of gets him. As the night closes in, Josef refuses to let Aaron leave. He convinces him to come inside and have a drink with him. And as Aaron keeps insisting that he needs to leave, Josef makes a confession to him. He thinks that the camera is off and that it's not being recorded, but he tells Aaron that he assaulted his wife. And in further desperation to escape, Aaron says, hey, let's have a drink. He pours his drink and he drugs Josef's drink with some Benadryl, and then Josef goes a little night-night, and Aaron is trying to find his keys while Josef is sleeping, and he reaches into one of Josef's pockets and finds his phone instead, and conveniently the phone starts ringing as soon as he has it in his hand, and he gets a call from Angela. Now, Angela is Josef's wife, we think, at this point, but he's trying to say, hey, your husband is being really weird, and he won't let me leave, and she says, yo, that's not my husband, that's my brother. And she just tells him, like, hey, my brother Josef has a lot of issues and you need to get out of there right now. Aaron tries to reiterate, like, is my life in danger right now? And all she says is, you need to get out right now. So he hangs up the phone, goes back, realizes that Josef woke up and he's hiding outside, and he goes up to him, and Aaron tells Josef that, hey, I talked to Angela, and immediately Josef hauls ass to the front door.
Talk to Angela.
He's just standing at the front door with the Peach Fuzz mask on, and he's freaking Aaron the fuck out. And there's a physical altercation between the 2, and the tape just ends for the day. Josef turns into full stalker mode. He knows Aaron's address. He sends him some gifts, which is like he sends him like a DVD of himself digging a grave. He sends him a stuffed wolf. And yeah, so he knows where he lives, and he just kind of stalks Aaron, freaks him out. We see him standing outside of his front door at one point after making really loud noises outside and waking Aaron up in the middle of the night. We actually see a scene where he's inside of the house filming Aaron while he's sleeping, and he cuts off a piece of his hair. That is like the stuff of nightmares. Like, if this actually happened to you, you would probably piss yourself. Just really batshit crazy stalker stuff. And then eventually Josef leaves Aaron one last gift. And that last gift is a DVD saying, like, hey, I'm going to be at this park at this time on this day. come and talk. We'll sort everything out and I'll explain myself to you, essentially. And so Aaron, being the dummy that he is, he's making all kinds of stupid decisions this whole movie, but he goes and he decides to meet up with Josef. To be safe, he sets up his camera to record the interaction from a distance, from his car, I imagine, and he also has his phone on like speed dial for the cops, I guess. But he goes to this park. I don't know why there's no people at this park that see what is about to happen, but he goes and sits on this park bench and he takes one look around behind him after he hears like a lawnmower start or something, and then after that he just faces forward and is watching out over this lake, and then we slowly see Josef creep up behind him with the peach fuzz mask on and an axe. He drives that thing right into Aaron's skull, and that is basically the end. And during this whole last interaction, Josef is watching this being replayed on his DVD player, and he pauses it, and it's just like, he asks the camera like, Aaron, why didn't you turn around? Like, you're really dumb. Saying exactly what the audience is thinking at this point. I think it's supposed to be a little bit meta like that. And then he continues playing the tape, and in the tape, when he's at the park, he leaves the frame for like a minute or so, and then in one of my favorite moments of the film by far, his Josef in the past jump scares the camera. He jumps in front of it and makes like a really loud noise, and that like scares the shit out of him watching it in the present day. It's all over. Just dark comedy gold right there. I love that moment. We end Creep 1 with Josef on the call with someone who is obviously responding to his ad. Once more, he's going by a different name by now. He opens up his closet, and the closet shelf is just full of all these tapes that he's been keeping forever, since at the earliest 1994. It's crazy how many tapes are on here. It's obviously like all of his encounters with these people that he's killed. And at this moment, we realize that this wasn't just a one-off incident with Aaron. He's been doing this for a while, and he is a serial killer, and he's on the phone with his next victim. Now, I want to read off some of these names that we see on the tapes in the closet, because who knows, maybe we'll encounter some of them in the Creep tapes. That would be really interesting if some of these end up in that series. Some of these names include Steven the pool boy, Gardner the painter, Nicole Giddens, Amanda the hairdresser, Tony Little from 1996, Dylan from 1994. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if any of those names creep up in the Creep tapes. I really like Creep 1. It came out 10 years ago, but I had a fond memory of it, and I enjoyed the rewatch more than I thought I would. It still holds up, and it's still one of my favorite found footage horror films. It's just one of those rare films that is equally unsettling and like funny and entertaining at the same time. There were a couple of alternate endings filmed, which include Josef just sitting on the bench at the end and Aaron going up and talking to him, and them just being like buddies, and I guess just talking it out, really. And there's another one that kind of cuts out before he hacks him in the head. He's like about to like touch his shoulder to let him know he's there. Both interesting endings. Those are the only two alternate endings that I've seen. I wonder if there are more, but it is always fun to see like how things could have ended instead. So now we're into Creep 2, and right off the bat, this has one of the best openings in a horror movie ever. It's kind of one of these interactions expedited. We like shoot up to the end of his friendship with one of these people. He's meeting him at his house for a drink, and he just reveals his secret that he's been following them around, and he slashes his throat right there at his kitchen table. It's very brutal and just really sets the scene for Creep 2. And this opening scene is really important because he states to his friend at the time that he feels unfulfilled and he doesn't know what to do with his life. He feels uninspired, and that kind of sets the framework for his mindset during this next interaction in the whole movie of Creep 2. So it seems like Creep 2 takes place a few months after Creep 1, at least a few months, because his beard is full, he's got longer hair, he just looks like way more like a creep than he did in the first one. And the videographer who falls victim this time is a YouTuber. Her name is Sarah, and she has this series called Encounters, where she reaches out to these people who post these ads looking for a friend and just kind of films her interaction with them and like studies them and just like shows that to her audience. And Josef is the perfect subject for that series, so she jumps on the chance to do it. Her views are not where she wants them, and so she's like, this is something that I got to get on my show to like boost it up and get those YouTube numbers up. And her desire for that attention and likability kind of plays into why she lets so much of what is about to happen to her without leaving. So she meets up with Josef, who is now going by Aaron. He's taken the alias of one of his previous victims, called Aaron one of his favorites because Aaron still saw good in Josef. So he's going by Aaron now. And yeah, he's just feeling unfulfilled in these killings, not inspired. And so he's like, what should I do next? And to spice things up a bit, he starts his interaction with Sarah by admitting that he's a serial killer, and he wants her to make a documentary about his life and these killings. And to convince her to make this documentary, he just says, hey, I won't kill you for the next 24 hours if you help me out with this documentary. And that wording, kill you in the next 24 hours, is pretty important there, and Sarah even points that out later on. Now, why in the hell would Sarah even go along with this without just like running out the door right away? Well, she doesn't really believe him at first. She's like, okay, this guy is just a whack job and he's crazy, and this is going to make this like video on my YouTube series even that much better. That's why she sticks around. She just doesn't believe that he's a serial killer. More awkwardness unfolds in Creep 2. One of the most awkward scenes in this one is that Josef, he's going by Aaron now, tells Sarah that to get to know someone, you have to see them like naked right away or something. And so he just strips down and he's just hanging dong. You see the whole thing, just so weird and awkward. And then he makes Sarah do the same thing. And that's basically the beginning of their relationship there. She even goes into the bathroom afterwards and says to the camera, like, there's so many red flags going on right now, but I'm still gonna hang around and see what happens. She puts a knife in her boot, and yeah, so they go off on their little adventure. We get a very similar premise here as the first one. It's just Aaron and Sarah kind of hanging out throughout the whole day, except here there's a lot of like romantic undertones. They really end up connecting. They're both just kind of weirdos looking to fit in somewhere, and Josef is trying to scare Sarah like the whole time, and Sarah's just kind of unfazed, and he's like, oh, like tough crowd, like tough nut to crack. And I think that he feels a connection to her because of that, a romantic connection. One important plot point to note here is that while he's in a hot tub, at one point he seemingly tells us about his first kill, which he claims happened when he was 15, which I don't really know if I believe that or not. And he could also be just using one of Aaron's dreams that he talks about in the first movie. He's filming himself talking about a dream that he has about him and Josef. And so now Josef might just be using that as a backdrop for more creepiness and a fake story to tell Sarah, just to add to his own lore. He just claims that he went to this show one night and went and partied with this band, and then afterwards he was walking back home, got picked up by someone who offered him a ride, and that person took him into the woods and beat him within an inch of his life, and then he turned the tables and like choked the guy out, and that was his first killing, and he just had this newfound love for killing. Don't know if that's true. I don't know if I really believe that that's a fact, but it's something worth noting at this point. So at some point, Aaron reveals to Sarah that the whole point of this documentary and this evening is for her to document him unaliving himself. And she doesn't really believe that either. Again, she still thinks that he's a whack job and isn't really like totally invested in what is happening and realizing how serious the situation is, except he does a couple of serious attempts, and which one includes hanging himself from like his loft. And at that point she's like, oh shit, and she like goes over and like helps him and brings him down, and that's like the final straw for her. So she's like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. But then he sweet talks her again and reveals to her like, hey, I was wearing this harness, I wasn't actually in any danger. And she's like, oh, okay, well, I guess funny joke, like I'll stick around still. And then even after this, he wants to take her out into the woods, into the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night, and she agrees to it like a dum-dum. And so they're walking out into the middle of the woods, and they come across this grave that he dug. It could be the same one that he dug in the video that he sent to Aaron from the first film. I'm not too sure about that part, because I am like very sure that the house that they're in the second movie is not the same house as the first one, but maybe it's in the same area. I don't know, but they come across this grave, and he's like, I didn't know if this was going to be for me or for you tonight. And then he suggests this like Romeo and Juliet plot of like, let's just stab each other and unalive ourselves together and lay here and, you know, make it this romantic story. And she is just like kind of stunned by this. There's a physical altercation, and he ends up stabbing her a bunch of times and throwing her in the grave. And then he comes back to the camera, which is conveniently set up to where like the gravesite is right behind him, and he's talking to the camera saying like, I didn't want to like kill you, I thought this was over, but then you came along, you're my muse. And he's just like nonchalantly talking to the camera, never looking behind him, which is kind of ironic because in the first movie, Aaron wasn't looking behind him when Josef attacked him. And now Josef, with the moniker of Aaron, is doing the same exact thing, talking to the camera, and then he's not watching behind him, and Sarah is still alive. She comes out from the grave, and she whacks him in the head with a shovel, and the tape ends right there. But that's not the complete end of the movie. There's another scene that happens after this that shows someone with a camcorder following Sarah, and now throughout the whole movie, Sarah has had purple hair. They make it's very purple, like unmistakably purple, and in this ending scene, it's more like black and it's a different hairstyle. So it could be either way before the happenings of Creep 2 or way after the happenings of Creep 2. And it doesn't have to be way after, but it doesn't take that long to change your hair and dye it. Anyway, it's not like immediately after this incident. The camera is following Sarah and follows her onto the subway, and whoever is behind the camera, it's unidentified, but I'm guessing it is Josef at this point. But he's following her, and she has headphones in, so she's not really listening to anything. She sits down on the subway, and then he starts whistling this song that has happened a few times throughout the series at this point. And she's just kind of like lollygagging, and then like gets a little smile on her face as if she's remembering back to Josef or that encounter in like a positive way. And then eventually her eyes lock onto the camera lens, and as soon as that happens, she gets this like wave of familiarity over her face, and then the camera just pans down really quickly and turns off, and that's where that one ends. Now I'm pretty sure that happened after the events of Creep 2, because if it happened before, like if her eyes locked with the camera, I don't think she would have like recognized the person behind the camera unless it was after what happened in Creep 2. And if it happened beforehand, I think she would probably remember Josef from that subway scene when she meets up with him later on after like applying to the ad. So I do think that this is afterwards, and that Mark Duplass's character is still alive, and Sarah is still alive, and everybody's still alive. I looked for a lot of hints and details to like confirm, like, can you see like any scars from her stabbings on her? Is she wearing the necklace that he gave her? But like there aren't any concrete details, and I'm sure that was intentional to leave it ambiguous like that. But I do personally think that this happens after the events of Creep 2. So that brings us to the end of Creep 2. And one more thing to note is the song used at the end of Creep 2. It's a song called Botanica de Los Angeles, and it's by this band. I don't know how to pronounce the band. It's like XIU, Shushu, maybe? I don't know. I've never listened to this band before. But the song that's used at the end of this is very important. The song is like an anthem for abuse victims, and it's talking about like the bond that people have, two different people that have both been beaten down by the world, and the bond that is formed from that. I think it just like clarifies the themes of these movies perfectly. It's like that's why these people connect to Josef so much, and why they are so enthralled by him and stick around for as long as they do. They're just like two different people. Like obviously Josef has his issues. He's had a very troubled past, and that's what led to his serial killerness. So yeah, the song just kind of encapsulates that in its lyrics. So that is where we're left in Creep 2. I tried looking up the ending song in Creep 1, but it doesn't seem to have as much significance as the song used at the end of Creep 2. So what do we know at this point leading into the Creep tapes? We know that Josef has killed 39 or 40 people. I believe Sarah was his 40th. He reveals that number in Creep 2. He also talks about turning 40 at the beginning of Creep 2, and so that's on average one killing per year of his existence. So that means that like if his first one started at 15, he's been killing a lot of people, like more than one per year, which is very interesting. So we've got 39 or 40 victims to go through here. And there, again, we know that there was like maybe a few months between 1 and 2. So the questions that we need answered are, is Josef alive at the end of Creep 2? Is this happening after Creep 2 or before Creep 2? So then if it's happening before Creep 2, is Sarah still alive at the end of Creep 2? If my theory is true and this happens after Creep 2, is he going to continue to stalk Sarah? Or are we going to see the end of that interaction between them? Will the Creep tapes take place before or after these movies? Who is Angela? Is she actually Josef's sister? Maybe she's an accomplice. That would be an interesting plot point to explore. But how much does she know? And why hasn't she reported him before if she does know a lot? Which stories that Josef has told us are real? Is the origin of Peach Fuzz real? Does he actually have cancer? Is he actually married? I don't think he's married. How did he acquire his wealth? He brags about having a lot of money, but we don't know where he got that money from. And yeah, are we going to see an end to Josef and his killings in the Creep tapes? Lots of questions that I know you and I are hoping will be answered in the Creep tapes. Now, the series is going to feature 30-minute episodes. I have a little bit of a worry on the grand scheme of things that this is going to get old and repetitive after a while, but I have a lot of faith in Mark Duplass. I love him as an actor and as a creator. I think that they're going to find ways to keep it interesting for these 6 tapes. I'm sure Peach Fuzz will make a lot of appearances. It would be neat if he is somehow in each one of the tapes. So yeah, I'm personally looking forward to this series. I definitely watch a lot more movies than horror series, so it'll be nice to get into a horror series. These are being released 2 at a time, I believe, or maybe it's just 2 for the initial release and then 1 per week after that, but there are 6 total tapes, and these are being released on Shudder. I've shouted from the rooftops how great Shudder is, so if you want to watch the Creep tapes, you got to check it out on Shudder. You can always sign up for a free trial using the link down in the description or at the pinned comment. It does help the channel if you use those links down below to sign up for the free trial. It's no extra cost to you, but it does help me out a little bit. So now we're going to get into Mark Duplass's juicy AMA that he did over on Reddit. If you don't know, AMA means Ask Me Anything, and a lot of directors have been doing this recently, especially in the horror genre. They'll hop on to r/horror and do a little Ask Me Anything where the audience gets to ask them questions and they reply to some comments. And it's really fun, and you get a lot of insight into their mind and the movie or the TV series that they're putting out. And so I just thought this would be fun to kind of round up the best answers in this video of Mark's AMA. So here we go. Hey Mark, I loved Creep and Creep 2 and I'm looking forward to the Creep tapes. How did the character originate? Are there any differences between original concept and finished idea? Mark replies, it's always ever evolving. I'd say the Creep tapes are a bit wilder and unhinged than the films, hopefully in a good way? ? So that's good to know. It's going to get even more wild and unhinged. The Creep movies are so unhinged and awkward, and I can't wait to see how bonkers it gets in the Creep tapes. Hey Mark, love the Creep movies and The League. Have you ever had any sort of paranormal encounter like ghosts or UFOs? He says, I grew up in New Orleans, too many to list. Shout out to The League, one of my favorite comedy shows. If you're looking for a comedy that you can breeze through and binge worthy, The League is where it's at. Have you ever thought about a Peach Fuzz animated series for kids? You're a sick person is Mark's reply there. What's the scariest movie you've ever seen? Mark Duplass says Blair Witch in the theater really got me. Blair Witch is another found footage classic. Doesn't surprise me that it's a found footage movie that the creator of Creep loves. Hi Mark, would you consider to direct or make some type of crossover with the beloved VHS franchise? Mark says totally open to that. I would love to see Mark as a featured director in the VHS franchise. Many of your horror projects like Creep hinge on the ambiguity of your characters' motives and intentions. How do you decide how much to reveal or conceal about a character's backstory to maintain that tension? And do you think mystery is more effective than shock in horror? Mark says, I think mystery and shock can be equally effective. It's all about how you've set it up and what the audience expectations are. We like keeping the main character a bit of a secret, but we are also dropping subtle hints along the way as to how he became who he is. The Creep Tapes final episode in particular offers some fun clues. So, we gotta look forward to the final episode for some clues as to how he became who he is. Mark, I'm very much looking forward to the Creep Tapes. Wondering about Peach Fuzz's origin? Was it your idea? Big Peach Fuzz fan. Have a great day. Well, I can't share that here. You have to come watch the show. I will say the final episode of this season gives some nice Easter eggs as to how this man became who he is today. He's really hyping up that final episode. What are some hidden gems you'd recommend for horror fans to watch, especially someone like me who's seen almost everything? He says, I watch mostly documentaries to help inform how to make found footage movies. I highly recommend some true crime docs and doc-series like The Jinx, Capturing the Freedmans, etc. The Jinx was a very interesting one. The ending shot of Creep on the bench has always stuck with me and my partner as one of the more intense and disturbing endings we've seen. Did you ever consider a different ending or even a shorter, longer version of the one we've seen, or was that always the planned finale? Mark says, we had so many different versions for this film, it took forever to get right. Will we see a Creep 3, please? Don't know yet. Okay, we don't know if the series is going to end it or if there's going to be a Creep 3. Are there any plans of bringing Sarah back to Creep? Sarah was the chick from the second movie, and he says, never say never. Creep really hits home because it feels spontaneous and intimate. What is something you've changed or perfected over the course of filming about your method of writing through improvisation? I don't think we've perfected anything. It's all about the sense of fun and messiness. That said, living together while we shoot is a big part of the process. We eat meals together, talk about how to improve things constantly. It's a 24/7 process. So here we get him talking about the end of Creep 2. It just says, at the end of Creep 2, is the implication that Josef kills Sarah, or do you see it more like he will just stalk her and watch her forever, like you can't get away from me? It certainly seems like he'd want to kill her, but I don't know how he'd pull it off in a big city. Also, do you think the origin Josef tells Sarah is his real origin, or is he BSing for the camera? So Mark says these are all great questions, and there's a good reason why we didn't answer them in the films, so I'm not going to answer them here, but not because I don't like you. So does that mean that they're not going to answer them in the show either? Come on, Mark, I need it. I need these answers. I love this question. Are all the tapes in the show from before, in between, or after Creep 1 and 2, or all of the above? He just simply says, good question, smiley face. So I'm thinking it might be a good mix of all of them. Mark, love the work and seriously looking forward to the Creep tapes. I have 2 questions. What advice would you give to viewers to really set the atmosphere for watching the show? Is there anything we should keep in mind as we begin this next leg into the adventure? I would watch them in order, and I would watch them as they come out so you have breaks in between. And I would watch them in the dark with someone you love to squirm with. All right, watch them. You got to watch them in order. Someone asked why they're doing a TV series instead of a movie sequel. And he just says, who knows? The TV episodes are fun to make, and we may make another film someday. So still leaving room open for Creep 3. Someone asks, will we ever see a Creep 3, or will the Creep tapes serve that function? He says, not sure yet, but I hope to make lots more stuff in this universe. This answer is a little bit disturbing. Someone said, what's been your biggest inspirations getting into horror, and what's the most surprising thing about yourself you've discovered since beginning these horror projects? Mark says, I think I discovered that minus the killing part. I share a lot in common with this character I play. He's stated a couple times in this AMA that when they're filming these episodes, they all kind of like hang out and live together, cook together, live together for a few days while they're making it, and they're constantly working on the story and evolving it as they go. It's like filmmaker camp. Lots of fun, but very, very exhausting. Fun fact, Mark Duplass owned the cabin in the first movie, so that's why they were able to film there. That was actually his home. All of us horror fans are going to love this answer. Hi, Mark. I'm curious if you have any favorite horror directors, and if so, would you ever work with them if given the chance? He says, I want to work with Mike Flanagan and Kate Siegel. That sounds like a great combination. Let's get it together. I think that's about all the details we're going to glean from this AMA with Mark Duplass. If I find any other interesting answers, I will let you guys know. But now that you've watched this video, you are ready to go watch the Creep tapes over on Shudder. I'm excited. I'm going to go and watch the first 2 episodes right now. Like the video, let me know down below if you want to hear my thoughts on the show as well, and I can release weekly reviews on them and let you know if you should check it out or not, and if it's good, what I thought, all that good stuff. Subscribe if you enjoy celebrating horror all year long. That's what we do here on the Nonstop Horror channel. Thanks for sticking around. My name is Cameron, and I'll see you in the next one.